Welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm your host, Susie Selleck, and today we are at the Falls of the Ohio Interpretive Center here in Clarksville, Indiana. And we are just moments away from a ceremony celebrating the expansion of the Lewis and Clark Trail. Stay tuned. I'll tell you all about it. Here with Jan Donaldson. Jan is playing the part of Captain Lewis here today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So how long have you had this role?
Had this role since 2005, and I joined the organization before then, but I got promoted, you might say, to from a private to a captain at Great Falls.
Oh, very nice. Now, when was this promotion?
I'm sorry?
When was the promotion?
Well, it was in 2005.
Oh, okay, that's
yeah, and when we were up in Great Falls, and then since then, I've become the chairman of the Discovery Expedition of St. Charles, and so the Lewis and Clark group that has the fleet and the keelboat, and we were the one that did the reenactment from Pittsburgh to Fort Clatsop and back.
So. Now, how long did that take?
Well, it took like 2.5 years. Actually, if you count from Monticello in January of '03, and then we arrived back to the river there at St. Louis, where the arch is, and of course they had the statue there and everything, and that was September of 2006. So
what are you looking forward to most today?
Well, I think it's a recognition of a long-standing effort to recognize the Eastern legacy of this fabulous trip that Lewis and Clark took. Along with the expedition and the members of that expedition, it was a remarkable achievement, certainly of their day. They had many perils that they had to overcome, and today we just reenact many of those things. We have obligations that we have to overcome to communities and some of those type of things, but we try to tell the story as best we can.
Awesome. Well, Captain Lewis, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Have fun.
All right. Thank you.
Lou Ritten, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here.
So what is your role in this very exciting day?
Well, I don't have an official role today, but our organization, the Lewis and Clark Trail Heritage Foundation, has been around for 50 years as a nonprofit, citizen-driven organization to promote Lewis and Clark. And we have been trying to get this event taking place, or the extension of the trail to take place. We've been working on this for about 25 years. And so today is the culmination of a lot of effort and time and money and just vision of people involved in our organization. And it's a big day for us.
Yeah, what does it mean to the city of Clarksville? Because, I mean, it's established that it started in Pittsburgh, and it's been a goin'. So for it to land the highlights, the honor in this town, what does that mean? Well,
it's great for Clarksville. The people here have been a primary motivator in getting the trail extension completed, and we're very grateful for all their efforts. Clarksville and Louisville, as part of the Falls of Ohio, are very important here. This is where, of course, the handshake took place, where Lewis and Clark actually met, and really, as a team, they began their expedition from this location.
Lou, there's some people who don't know the significance of the handshake. Can you elaborate on that quickly?
Well, sure. Lewis and Clark had met previously in the military, and Clark had actually been Lewis's commander for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And then they went off in different directions. Lewis actually became the secretary in the White House of President Jefferson. And in that role, Jefferson knew him well and figured that he would be a great guy to lead the expedition across the country once the Louisiana Purchase had taken place. And Lewis knew that he needed somebody to give him a hand. And so the first person he thought of was William Clark. And it turned out that Clark was more than happy to go, and they made probably the greatest co-commanding group of officers in the history of the world. So it worked out pretty well.
I would say that it did.
Yeah.
Gives us a reason to be here today, too.
That's right, absolutely.
So is there anything special that today is attributed to your work specifically? Of course, everyone's going to team,
yeah,
and that's great.
Yeah.
What part of this specifically has your work all over it?
Well, as I mentioned, this has been a 25-year effort or so, and I just happen to be here at the tail end of it. We have an organizing committee that we call the Eastern Legacy Committee.
Okay.
that has been very instrumental in trying to push this legislation through. They've established signs and markers at various locations along the Ohio River and elsewhere out in the east. And those people deserve mention also. We have Phyllis Yeager right here from Floyd's Knob. We have Mike Loesch from Mason, Ohio. We have Jerry Wilson from Versailles, Indiana. And then Paige Cruz from West Virginia. Those four have really been the driving force behind it, and they deserve most of the credit, believe me.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. That's awesome. Well, thank you for being able to elaborate a little bit on today, and congratulations.
Yeah,
this is an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. Perfect timing for the sun to come out. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Cam Clark, and I have the privilege of being the director of the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. And I want to welcome you to Falls of the Ohio State Park, as well as Falls of the Ohio National Wildlife Conservation Area. It is truly our honor to play host to today's event and an exciting announcement. And I would be remiss if I didn't welcome you to mile marker 605 of the Ohio River, which is essentially the central point to the new 1,200-mile legacy extension to the Lewis and Clark National Trail. And there's a lot of people that deserve thanks for making today possible. I want to certainly thank Senator Young and Congressman Hollingsworth and Pence, the members of the Lewis and Clark Expedition Committee, Lieutenant Governor Crouch, certainly our partners with the National Park Service and local and state and federal partners, all who played a part in making today possible. So thank you all for making this happen. You know, it's our pleasure to be the caretakers of the George Rogers Clark site, just a little down river from here, and that's the site where Meriwether Lewis and William Clark met, shook hands, and began planning the expedition west to the Pacific Ocean. And at that site, we host events. We also here tell the story of that day. We also tell the stories of the local expedition members that they chose to be part of that adventure, and certainly stories from the expedition itself through multimedia here at the Interpretive Center, which I encourage all of you, if you've not had a chance to experience it, please do so before you leave us today. We are excited that the attention this will bring to the Falls of Ohio State Park, but we're probably more excited about working together to continue to tell the story of the Lewis and Clark core expedition, the core discovery, both locally and nationwide. So again, thank you all for being here. Welcome again, and let's get this celebration started. I'm going to introduce Mr. Paul Fetter, the president of the Clarksville Town Council.
Good morning, I'm Paul Fetter. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the town of Clarksville and the Clarksville Town Council, our governing body here seated on the front row. I'd like to welcome everyone to the historic town of Clarksville and thank all those involved for the efforts in extending the National Trail. We are here today to celebrate the national announcement of the extension of the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. This has been a decades-long marathon. Some of us involved today, myself included, are new to the efforts and honored to help carry the torch across the finish line. We'd like to thank the National Park Service for selecting Clarksville, Indiana for the location of the announcement, and the Indiana Department of Natural Resources for hosting this event. I'd also like to thank God for everyone getting here safely and bringing us this beautiful weather. We've had rain for days, and He parted the clouds for us for a few moments, thank God. Clarksville is rich in its history. It's the first town in the Northwest Territory. It was established in 1783 by General George Rogers Clark, 5 years after he founded Louisville, Kentucky, and 2 decades before the state of Indiana was formed. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson commissioned the Lewis and Clark Expedition, a peaceful, military, scientific, and exploratory expedition to find the most direct and practical water communication across the continent for the purpose of commerce all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Clarksville's optimal geographic location at the Falls of the Ohio River and being home to William Clark, Revolutionary War hero George Rogers Clark's brother, it was selected as the ideal operational staging point of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Co-expedition leaders Meriwether Lewis and William Clark met in Clarksville and made their famous handshake at the Falls of the Ohio. Over the next 2 weeks, they enlisted the Corps of Discovery, during which time General George Rogers Clark provided the expedition with strategic intelligence from his vast experience of his decades on the frontier, and with his expertise in Indian relations helped them move forward across the country. The Lewis and Clark expedition began, opening the door for the great westward American expansion. In Clarksville, we like to say, the Lewis and Clark expedition, it began here. Clarksville's critical point and the most important expedition in world history has largely been overlooked in countless documentaries, and for the last 2 decades, several dozen senators and representatives, both federally and nationally, governors from 5 states, and members of Lewis and Clark organizations and commissions, many of those who are here with us today, have worked tirelessly to correct this historical omission. On March 12, 2019, President Donald Trump signed into law Senator Todd Young's bill, the Eastern Legacy Extension Act, extending the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail all the way to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Senator Todd Young has been representing Clark County, Indiana for nearly a decade, first as a member of the House of Representatives and now as a U.S. Senator. In that time, he's been a tireless promoter of our state and our region, in addition to leading the charge to extend the National Lewis and Clark Historic Trail to Indiana. He's also been a leading proponent of making the Indiana Dunes our state's first national park. Please help me welcome Senator Todd Young.
Well, thank you, Paul, for the generous introduction. Thank you all for the warm welcome. Thank you for being here. This is a magnificent day. It's great for the city. It's great for the entire area. It's great for the state of Indiana and for the country. Representatives Hollingsworth, Pence, Lieutenant Governor Crouch, other distinguished guests who I know have worked for years on this, I want to welcome you all and thank you for your past efforts. It's hard to believe. It's been more than 200 years in the making, but today we are making it happen because of this team effort that extends over, frankly, generations. In 1803, as has been said, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark joined up with the Corps of Discovery on a mission to explore the West. They met here in the town founded by William's brother, George Rogers Clark, or as one of my young interns put it, isn't it weird that Lewis and Clark met up in a town called Clarksville? Lewis and Clark, their team, often called the 9 Young Men from Kentucky, showed extreme bravery, intelligence, and perseverance on their journey to the Pacific. Since the 1960s, they've been remembered through the Lewis and Clark Trail, which has provided educational and tourism opportunities along the same route the Discovery Corps traveled. Now, the trail had run, as so many of you know, from St. Louis, Missouri to Astoria, Oregon. But until this year, the trail was incomplete. It ignored the years and the places leading up to St. Louis, when Lewis and Clark were training, recruiting, and preparing for their journey. I've worked on extending this trail for a number of years, and I just can't reiterate enough that I'm standing on the shoulders of others who've also worked on this. I see in the front row State Representative Matt Pierce, my friend, who served on the staff of Congressman Barron Hill, who preceded me as congressman in the Indiana 9th District. I commend the congressman and the representative and others for their previous work. So finally, we're able to recognize Indiana's unique role in this expedition. And I'm proud to say, with the support of my friends in both the House and the Senate, we were able to get it done. Now, the Lewis and Clark Trail spans the entire southern border of Indiana. But no one spot is more significant than right here at the Falls of the Ohio. I think the sun came out when I said that, too. Today, Indiana is known as the crossroads of America. But before there were roads, there was Lewis and Clark, joining forces where we stand today to begin an exploration that would really change the world. William Clark once wrote, quote, "I have always held it little short of criminality to anticipate evils. I will allow it to be a good, comfortable road until I'm compelled to believe otherwise. So here's to a good, comfortable road going forward. I'm excited to see what the future holds. It's a privilege to be with all of you. God bless.
We had a late addition. Senator Mitch McConnell wasn't able to be here with us today, but Andy Candia has some prepared comments he sent for him to read. Andy, if you could, please.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here. I know Senator McConnell doesn't represent this state in the Senate, but I'm pretty sure it's behind me. But he was very proud to bring to the floor for vote and support the passage of a comprehensive and bipartisan lands bill that would help protect our nation's national treasures for future generations to enjoy. From the beginning, the Senator worked closely with the Senate Committee on Natural Resources to develop a public lands bill that would benefit communities across Kentucky and the country, and he was happy to see provisions included to extend the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, as well as provisions to incorporate both Camp Nelson and Mill Spring Battlefield, both in Kentucky, into the national park systems. Senator McConnell has long been a champion of conserving public lands for Kentuckians and everyone in the United States to enjoy, as well as to help drive tourism, and I so appreciate the opportunity to take a few seconds today to help mark the expansion of the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. Thank you very much.
What an authentic Kentucky accent. Next we have U.S. Congressman Trey Hollingsworth. He's serving his second term as U.S. Representative of Indiana's 9th Congressional District, a wide-ranging district comprised of small businesses, suburban communities, and hardworking farmers and striving students, all united by their focus on how we collectively build a more prosperous, safer, and stronger America. Trey serves on the House Financial Services Committee, and he's also working to create opportunity to remove government blockades to enable each generation of Americans to live better than the one before. Please help me welcome Congressman Trey Hollingsworth.
Well, 70 years ago, Enrico Fermi was asked late night while he and others were working on the Manhattan Project why it would be that America would prevail in World War II. Enrico Fermi was born in Italy and had immigrated to America just before the outbreak of the war, and he was absolutely certain that America would win the war. And when asked about it that night, he said, "No people anywhere on this earth are willing to explore the limits of their capability and follow into the depths of their curiosity than the American people." And that is very much what we are celebrating here today. The curiosity of the American people, the willingness of the American people to explore what was then unknown to them. And I hope as we celebrate this day, and we mark the extension and the connection of this trail, that we will connect with that spirit of exploration, that spirit of curiosity. That we will remember that it's not just exploring geography, but also exploring who we are as a people, exploring what we can do as a people, exploring what we believe as a people, that we'll be reminded of that. I couldn't be more excited to be here with you today to celebrate this extension and to celebrate the hard work, as Senator Young said, of so many people that came before, of so many people that invested the effort to have this place, to have the continuation of this trail recognized as an important milestone in American history, an important milestone in who we have since become. And so thank you for investing your time here today in celebrating that exploration and that spirit of curiosity that still breathes life into Americans. Thank you so much.
Next, U.S. Congressman Greg Pence, we think we know who his brother is, represents Indiana's 6th District, where he lives with his wife, Denise, in Columbus. He's a proud father, grandfather, and Marine officer and small businessman who will ensure Indiana's 6th District continues its strong tradition of leadership in Congress. Joining the Marine Corps in 1979, his hometown of Columbus Pence considered his role in Congress as a new opportunity to serve the community, the state, and the country that he loves. Pence understands that the 6th District needs a leader, will prioritize constituents, and ensure Hoosiers have a seat at the table. Pence serves on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the House Committee on Foreign Affairs in the 116th Congress. Please help me welcome Congressman Greg Pence.
Well, thank you, 9th District, for having me down here today. It's an honor to be here on behalf of the 6th District. Tom Saunders kind of told me when I was running for office, you got to get involved in this when you get to Congress. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for having me here today, Senator Todd Young, and Congressman Hollingsworth. Great to be with you all. Thank you as well to the members of the Lewis and Clark Expedition Commission. It's an honor to have voted for and participated in this event. I'm proud to co-sponsor the Eastern Extension Legacy Act, and I see it's one of the highlights of my first week in Congress to do something productive in Congress instead of all the infighting that you see on whatever you want. As we celebrate the 1,200-mile expansion of Lewis Clark National Historic Trail, I am confident that generations of Americans will experience the beauty and wonder and of the core discovery. I spent many years working down in this area and ran along the path here many times. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you for having me here today.
Additionally, late comments from U.S. Congressman John Yarmouth. Nicole Yates is here to read those for you quickly, please.
Good morning. I serve as Congressman Yarmouth's district director, but it's also especially exciting for me to be here today because I serve on the board here at the Falls of the Ohio as your vice chair with Chairman Bill Reedy, who is over there. Wave your hand, Bill. All right. And I also serve with Representative Matt Pierce because I am a former employee of Congressman Barron Hill. Very excited. Worked for him for 10 years. So it is exciting for me to be here today to represent Kentucky's 3rd District Congressman John Yarmouth, who is unable to be with us. And so I will read his statement on behalf of the people of Louisville, Kentucky's 3rd District. I want to offer my sincere thanks and congratulations to everyone involved in this effort. I'm sorry I can't be here with you to help celebrate this historic news, but I wanted to pass along my appreciation to all who dedicated their time, passion to making this extension a reality. It certainly didn't come easy, but our collective persistence will now allow this important 1,200-mile stretch a federally recognized trail to continue to East Pittsburgh. I'm particularly proud to have worked with Senator Todd Young, Congressman Andy Barr, Congressman Trey Hollingsworth, and former Congressman Luke Messer and others to ensure the Department of Interior completed their review of this much-needed project and that the Eastern Legacy Extension Act would find its way into the public lands package signed into law just a few short weeks ago. Today is a great day for Kentucky, for Indiana, and for our nation as a whole as we celebrate Lewis and Clark and their important role in making America what it is today. Thank you all.
And now for Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. She's a lifelong resident of Evansville, where she lives with her husband, Larry Downs. She was elected Lieutenant Governor in 2016. She was previously served as Indiana State Auditor. Before assuming that role, she was a state representative, also a Vandenberg County Auditor and Commissioner. As Lieutenant Governor, Suzanne oversees a portfolio that includes tourism development and other state departments and offices. She serves as President of the Indiana Senate and chairs the Indiana Counterterrorism and Security Council. Lieutenant Governor Crouch received her bachelor's degree, majoring in political science from Purdue University. But one important event that happened as this came together was this keelboat got here. And without her and her office, this would not have made it. In Indiana, the permits for moving large equipment, you get 5 days to get your permit in and to get it answered. Well, it turned out the truck driver called 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon and said, I don't have my permit. to move the keel boat into Indiana. We were shocked. We weren't sure what to do. I knew Phyllis had a contact with the Lieutenant Governor's office. She promptly called them, and they worked late into the evening, Friday night, into the next day, into Saturday, and they did it the right way. They got through the different departments to make sure that they got their permits correctly. It would have been simple to have the state police go and escort the boat in, but they did it the way you're supposed to do it. Please help me welcome Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Kraus.
How wonderful it is to be here with you this morning. Governor Holcomb and I are so proud to support, and I'm so proud to be a part of this historic announcement. And it is so good to see our partners in the Indiana General Assembly with us today, Senator Garton and Grooms, and Representatives Fleming, Pierce, Saunders, Clear, and Engelman. Thank you for your service. And of course, Senator Young, Representative Hollingsworth, and Representative Pence. Thank you for your service to the state of Indiana and to our country. Thomas Jefferson said, "I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past." And it was those dreams of the future that brought, in 1803, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to Clarksville, where they set off and traveled the Ohio River, embarking on their journey towards the west. Today, it is the history of the past that brings us together for this historic announcement. The 1,200-mile extension of the Lewis and Clark Trail will benefit not only Indiana's economy, but our tourism, and allow us to leave a mark on the national map. Indiana joins 11 other states in honoring our predecessors who began their great adventure. And in fact, because of this, Indiana is the last state to have a national trail. It is my pleasure to support Senator Young and Representatives Hollingsworth and Pence, those who work so hard in ensuring that Indiana and 9 other states are recognized as contributors to the Lewis and Clark legacy. What is so great about Indiana are her people. You here today, Hoosiers all across our great state, hardworking men and women who know that when we come together and we work together, we can build a better tomorrow. And that is what we are doing. So thank you for the honor of serving as your Lieutenant Governor, and God bless you.
Thank you again, Lieutenant Governor. Jim Keith was appointed by the governor in 2003 and reappointed by succeeding governors as chairman of the Indiana Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Commission, known as the Lewis and Clark Expedition Commission. He observed early on that many people involved with the Lewis and Clark history and story were descendants or academia, and he knew that this was a tremendous tourism opportunity. As director of the Clark and Floyd Counties Convention and Tourism Bureau, at the time known as the Sunny Side of Louisville, he led the effort to embrace the story from local Clarksville's perspective. Retired after 30 years as executive director of the Tourism Bureau, he continued his valiant role in the Lewis and Clark story as chairman of the Lewis and Clark Expedition Commission. Please help me welcome Chairman Jim Keith.
Thank you, Paul. Indiana Lewis and Clark Expedition Commission, a state commission going back before the bicentennial years of 03 and 06, which is a non-funded, non-staffed, Lieutenant Governor, you noticed that, right? Commission of all volunteers with 7 members appointed by the governor of Indiana. Jim Keith, the chairman, Lucas Green, Department of Natural Resources, Mark Newman, Department of Tourism. He's since moved on, but he hasn't been, a replacement hasn't been appointed. Dr. Carl Kramer, Historic Society, Jerry Robertson, citizen from Sellersburg, Phyllis Yeager, citizen from Floyd's Knobs, and Jerry Wilson, citizen from Versailles, Indiana. We also have legislative members, the 4 of them: Senator Ron Grooms, Jeffersonville; Senator Mark Scoops, Bloomington; Representative Matt Pierce, Bloomington, and Matt served as the first chairman of the commission. I was appointed in '03. And Representative Tom Saunders, and I think where he lives is very appropriate, Louisville, Indiana. So we appreciate that. In addition, we created additional members we call foundation members. Carlene Budorf, who's a board member of the local tourism bureau and has been for 25 more years, and also a former state representative. Danny Cummings, who was bicentennial chair of the signature event that was held in Clarksville, and Jim Holmberg was his signature event in Louisville, cooperated together for the biggest second signature event at the time in 2003. And then also State Representative Ed Clare serves on the foundation also as a former commission member. Claudia Crump, Indiana University Southeast, with the Cultural Resource Centers. Brian Kaluzny, Clarksville Parks Department, big help. And Jim Epperson, the current Executive Director of the Tourism Bureau. Since the beginning, the Indiana Commission has led the effort for the Eastern Legacy Trail Extension. It's been a constant. This goes back to starting as Senator Young alluded to Barron Hill. When Barron was a brand new congressman, there was planning for the bicentennial years of '03. He shows up at the meeting and there basically was asked, "Why are you here?" And he responds, "Well, that's for my district. Lewis and Clark started in Clarksville. That's my district, so I thought I'd attend this meeting." Matt Pierce at that time was his administrative aide in Washington, D.C. So we've had a long history of Lewis and Clark. That's kind of started the process with our involvement in Lewis and Clark and establishing that Clarksville needs this true place as a beginning of the Lewis and Clark story. It was followed by Congressman Mike Sodrell in 2006, and then again another unique event. You had a congressional hearing in Clarksville to say, "Gee, we need to study this, have the National Park study this. We need to get it started." There's a congressional hearing where a congressman came to Clarksville for the hearing to get that process started. Of course, it took 4 years for the Parks Department to start the study, but they started in 2010. They thoroughly studied it because it took another 6 years to get the study done, the extension study. At that point, they kind of thought, well, that's a pretty good deal. We recommend, we think we need to do that. So 2018, Representative, again, the tremendous Indiana connection, Lieutenant Governor, you mentioned the connection. You had the House of Representatives, Luke Messer take the charge, Susan Brooks from Indiana, Bill Johnson from Ohio, and John Yarmouth from Kentucky. They introduced the bill, got it passed in the House. A month later, it goes to the Senate, where Senators Joe Donnelly and Senators Todd Young shepherded in the Senate. Got to the last week of the year, after Christmas, in December, it lost by 1 vote. Oh well, Senator Young came to the occasion and they all came together and it was signed into law March 12th, 2019. So through the leadership of Lewis and Clark Commission, we got the Lewis and Clark Trail Heritage Foundation involved. They're headquartered in Great Falls, Montana, and they've been having a board of 14 members. Traditionally, that had been primarily a Western organization, west of the Mississippi. But we worked real hard, and Phyllis Yeager of our commission got involved in the Bicentennial Council in 2001 until its sunset in 06, and then became a board member for 6 years from 04 to 010. She was followed by Jerry Robertson of our commission, and he was followed by Jerry Wilson, who currently serves on the board. Other board members are Chuck Crace of Prospect, Kentucky, with the Ohio River chapter of the organization, along with Mike Loesch of Mason, Ohio. So there's a long tradition involved in that. Jim Holmberg of the Filson Society is also very involved at the Lewis and Clark Trail Heritage Foundation. So we've had strong support of what we call the Eastern Legacy, or Eastern support for the advocates and supporters and staff support for the trail extension. That's been very, very positive. Also strong support from Kentucky member, former president of the Trail Heritage Foundation, is Jim Mallory of Lexington, who makes yearly visits to Washington, D.C. to encourage elected officials to extend the trail. And he visited Mark Wheatley so much in Omaha, Nebraska, at the National Parks headquarters that I believe people out there thought he was a resident of Omaha. A big thank you to the many individuals and groups who've contributed to the effort the past 18 to 20 years for the Eastern Legacy of the Lewis and Clark Trail to become an official part of the Lewis and Clark Historical Trail. Why do we do this? National recognition of Clarksville's role in leading the Lewis and Clark story. Lewis came down the river in the keelboat from Pittsburgh, arrived in October 1803 in Louisville, recruited, trained 9 young men of Kentucky, the leadership of the Corps of Discovery, departed with about 33 people, and the destination was St. Louis. We know they had a very successful trip. They spent 9 days of training and enlisting. It was a military operation. They departed October 26, 1803, and then returned on November 5th, 1807. I've said this many times, and I truly believe that there's no community in the United States who has embraced the Lewis and Clark story as well as Clarksville, Indiana has. That goes back with hosting the second national signature event during the bicentennial years in October 2003, development of the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Park, building the replica of George Rogers Clark cabin at the cabin site, part of Falls of the Ohio, developing the Lewis and Clark Greenway Trail, which had a kind of a grand opening this past Saturday. It's exciting to see all the activity there. Then the interpretive center, the film, the video, the little theater on Lewis and Clark story, which is very good. And of course, the bronze handshake statue over here. So this is just the beginning of the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail from Pittsburgh to Clarksville to St. Louis. We had an opportunity to officially tell the story from the Clarksville perspective to visitors, tourists, historians, school children, residents, and take a lot of pride in the community. So thanks to all those who look forward to a bright future as we continue, as we proceed on with the story of Lewis and Clark. Thank you.
And now, the living legend, Peyton Bud Clark. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, he is a great-great-great-grandson of William Clark. He and his wife Mary currently reside in Crooked Lake, that's west of Brighton, Michigan. Bud's an avid collector of antique firearms and Western Americana, specializing in Lewis and Clark period artifacts. Bud has had his items exhibited at the National Park Service, the Filson Historical Society, the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Centers in Great Falls, Montana, and Washburn, South Dakota, the Museum of Idaho, the Gerald Ford and Lyndon Baines Johnson Presidential Museums and Libraries, the National Rifle Association National Show, and numerous Lewis and Clark events. In addition, Bud has been a great speaker at many events across the country. Bud is a longtime member and executive board member of the Lewis and Clark Heritage Trail Foundation. In 2005, he received the Foundation's Distinguished Service Award. Bud is also a leading member of the Discovery Expedition of St. Charles, portraying Captain William Clark, which completed the Eastern Legacy in 2003. And then in May 2004, they continued chronologically up the Missouri to recreate the Lewis and Clark expedition, taking the story and living history to communities across the country. For Bud, the privilege of interacting with the Indian tribes along the trail was one of the most significant aspects of the adventure. In '01, Bud was invited to the White House as a family representative for a special ceremony in the East Wing where President Bill Clinton presented William Clark's Captain's Commission to Bud, officially making William Clark Captain retroactive to 1804. Please help me welcome the great living legend, Bud Clark.
I'm kind of taken back by all of that. Thank you very much. For the Clark family, this is like old home week. Coming back to the Falls is always a special treat. My wife Mary's with me today, my daughter Lisa, my grandson Chase. And we never feel like strangers here. We always feel like family. And we've been here many times and always been treated warmly on both sides of the river. The Louisville side, where my good friend Jim Holmberg works at the Filson, who I've worked for many, many years. Some years ago, I guess at this point it had been decades ago, my brother and I made a pilgrimage down here to visit Jim and do a little genealogy work at the Filson. Okay. And when we were finished there for the day, we crossed over to the sunny side with the intent of visiting the site of George Rogers Clark's home overlooking the falls. Okay. We came over here and started searching around, and we found a sign on a boulevard not too far from here. And Jim, I'm sure you remember that sign. And it said something to the effect, somewhere around here George Rogers Clark lived, overlooking the falls. Well, that was a bit of a disappointment, but nonetheless, we walked the areas and walked through the bushes out and overlooked the falls, etc., you know. Well, some years later, it's a horse of another color. It's very appropriate that we should be officially honoring the official naming of the Eastern Legacy here at the Falls. Certainly this area on both sides of the river, especially in Clarksville, exemplifies what the Eastern Legacy is all about. Okay. And we see what has transpired in this area from a grassroots effort, from the community coming together and working together and making things happen. And now when you come to visit George Rogers Clark's home site, you will find a beautiful park area. I've had the pleasure of sleeping down there a few times. It's a wonderful place to visit, to picnic, to bring the family. They have wonderful events down there. And of course, the grounds that we're standing on also exemplifies what happens from a grassroots community effort. People like Phyllis Yeager, excuse me, Jim Keith, Danny Cummings, and many, many others that have worked so long and hard to make things happen over here. And on the other side of the river, you have Locust Grove, the home of William Clark and George Rogers Clark's sister, who married William Cron. You have the wonderful things that have been done on the waterfront, the heroic statue of York, the Filson and their recent expansion. So there's so much going on here at the Falls that it's the essence of what the Eastern Legacy is all about. When we pushed off in that keelboat from Elizabeth, Pennsylvania in 2003, we really didn't know what to expect. We knew that we were going to chronologically stop all along the river and visit every little town, every big town, from Pittsburgh all the way to the confluence of the Ohio. But we really didn't know what to expect. We were overwhelmed the way the communities came together and made special events happen for their local area and their local community. And in the long haul, it's not just marking the Lewis and Clark Trail that the Eastern Legacy is all about, but rather it serves as a catalyst for the communities to recognize their own local history, special things that have happened in their own communities, and in so doing, coming together and becoming a closer-knit community. And on a larger scale, the bicentennial and the Eastern Legacy will be a catalyst for things like that to happen. And as we come closer together, we become a closer-knit community family. And that's a good thing. That's the legacy of the bicentennial. That will be the legacy of the Eastern Legacy. People coming together to mark their history and the special things that happen in their own backyards. The Eastern Legacy has taken off long before today in the minds of historians and people that are close to the Ohio Valley, close to the history of the area. Starting in Pittsburgh, PA, one of our members, John McNulty, has been very involved locally there. They now have signage at the head of the trail, if you will. Soon there will be more historical markers up on the hill overlooking Bruno's Island. So good things are already happening, and they will continue to happen as we come down the Ohio from community to community. So I'm very, very proud to be a part of that. I'm proud to be friends with so many of the wonderful people here today. I thank our honored guests for all their support to make this happen. And I like to think of it as just the beginning of things to come. I'm sure it will be. So thank you all for the privilege of speaking here today. I'm very honored to be here. I'm very, very excited about seeing our American family come closer together, and I know it will, all down the Ohio Valley. So God bless our American family, and thank you all.
And the moment you all been waiting for. Mark Weekly, I'd like to introduce the superintendent of the National Lewis and Clark Historic Trail for the past 10 years, with the National Park Service for 27 years. This is the man that tells how it happens.
Wow, that's all I can say after listening to everybody here. This is so exciting. And there's a common theme I'm seeing here that really struck me. When Lewis and Clark went on the expedition, it was about collaboration, it was about partnership, it was about different people working together for a common goal. And the creation of the Lewis and Clark Trail, and particularly the extension of the Lewis and Clark Trail, is about people coming together, working together to make this happen. And it is so fitting that that's the way this has been created. I would like to thank everybody that was a part of this, but if I were to list everybody, number one, we'd be here all day, and I think I would probably forget somebody, and so I'm not going to take that risk. But one thing I do want to acknowledge, and I think it's worth noting, is somebody who's not here is Dr. Stephen Ambrose, the author who wrote Undaunted Courage, as well as many other books. He did something very few, if any, authors had done before him. He actually talked about what happened before St. Louis and Wood River, Illinois. He talked about the expedition, the preparation for the expedition, the preparing for it, what it took to get to this point. And I think that was incredibly important and plays a really important role in us being here today. People became aware, many people who hadn't been, how much led up to the Lewis and Clark expedition in the West. That, it didn't just magically happen in St. Louis, Wood River. It started long before that. And so I think we all owe him a debt of gratitude for Undaunted Courage, but also for recognizing and acknowledging and writing about that history leading up to it. I also have to, I think about this, the way things get done in National Historic Trails. This isn't, for me in the National Park Service, we don't come in and manage National Historic Trails. We are all about working with people, about collaboration, about bringing people together. It is all about partnerships. It is not about management, it's about collaboration, it's about working together, which is very fitting when you think about how this extension happened, when you think about how the expedition happened. And there's so many important partners in this, I can't name them all, but I really have to recognize two groups that have been vitally important for this trail. And, on a national scale, our good friends with the Lewis and Clark National Trail Heritage Foundation, Lou Retton is here, and many other past presidents have played a really important role, and I thank you for your support. And we're also very blessed and honored to have a friends group, the Lewis and Clark Trust, and I really want to thank Jim Mallory and Stephanie Ambrose Tubbs, who have contributed so much and supported us all along the way. And I know there's many, many others of you who contributed so much. I also really want to thank the folks here in Clarksville that when we called up and said, hey, we want to do something to recognize this really important event, we want to do something to acknowledge this, and we'd like to do it in Clarksville. The answer was yes. We're ready. What can we do? And I appreciate that so much. That has been so valuable. And I'm so pleased to be here. I'm so pleased to see everybody here. And let me, on behalf of the National Park Service, the Department of Interior, officially announce the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail has been extended, and it runs from Pittsburgh all the way to the Oregon coast. And now I believe we're going to have a special event coming up here, a very famous event. Involves a handshake, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Greetings, Captain.
One more time. All right. One final special organization that has supported us, and I forgot to mention, is the Western National Parks Association. They have supported us. They've actually hosted the cookies and the treats inside. So I know most of you are ready probably to get in pretty soon and warm up. But again, let me just say, thank you. I appreciate you all being here so much, and I truly and sincerely look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
And thanks everyone again for coming out today. The culmination of events that have led to this historic announcement, we're making Clarksville part of the National Lewis and Clark Historic Trail, has put Clarksville and Louisville on the map forever, an inspiration for future generations. Thanks for everyone joining us today, and please stay around for conversation and refreshments. Thank you.
All right, Congressman Pence, nice to have you here today. So what did you think about this whole ceremony here?
It was an honor to be here today. I came in, I just got elected back in January, or sworn in back in January, and I got to vote on this bill, so I was excited to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this bill has been in the making for 20-some plus years, and now here we are today getting to see it come to a fruition. And what kind of honor is that for you? I know you're fairly new here, but what kind of honor is that? This is your home state, all that.
Right. So I was talking to the society chair, and he's been working on it through 4 different congressmen, and my predecessor actually sponsored it and introduced it into Congress. So I stand on the shoulders of giants as far as this is concerned.
Yes, absolutely. Well, do you have anything that you're looking forward to see this like push forward, or today's the day and we're celebrating?
I think this is only the beginning of everything that can be done here along the river. I'm from here all the way up to Cincinnati, and I hope we do more.
I'm sure that we will, and that's good to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
United States Senator Todd Young, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
You got to speak at this honor today. Tell me what it means to you. You represent Indiana and all that stuff.
Well, I'm really excited that we got history right. The Lewis and Clark Trail did not begin in St. Louis, Missouri, which is what so many generations of school children were taught, and now they understand that it actually began far east of there, and right here, Clarksville, Indiana. I mean, this played an essential role in terms of preparing for that voyage, that core of discovery journey that's so important in our nation's history.
All right. So, what was your favorite part of today?
My favorite part, I think, was hearing from the ancestor of one of the leaders of that voyage about some of the details, some of the trials and tribulations that they endured, and also being reminded that this Legacy Extension Act, which I was able to get passed through Congress, is really a different type of legacy in one sense. We're leaving a legacy of communities coming together here in this modern era to get something like this passed, and that's really sort of a beautiful way to think about this legislation.
Yes, I thought you put it great during the ceremony. This was great too. So Todd, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Congressman Trey Hollingsworth, happy to have you here today. So this was a great honor. Tell me, what was your favorite part about today?
Well, my favorite part was seeing how many people were out here today, right? I never expected this many people would come out for something that happened over 200 years ago, right? But to celebrate the moment when we came together and said it's important for us to remember this historic day and this historic exploration.
Now, aside from the Newfoundland, which totally stole my heart, what was one of your favorite parts just of the reenactment?
Well, I love that part as well. My son, who I have a 20-month-old, all he loves in this world are doggies. And so I should have brought him. That would have been his favorite part. But I love just seeing everyone relive that historical moment when hands were shook and a decision was made to explore the vast continent that this country sits on. And I love that, right? From sea to shining sea, we are a people that explore. We are a people who are curious. And I love that about us. And I love that that was exemplified not only today, but on the historic moment in 1803.
Trey, I have more questions, but that answer was so good. I think I'm going to mic drop.
Mic drop?
Right here. Good. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for joining us here today. Suzanne Crouch. I'm Susie Selleck. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Susie.
So talk to us, what was your favorite part about today?
I think my favorite part was when the descendant of William Clark spoke.
Yes.
It just added that kind of history to the event, and it kind of made you feel like a part of William Clark was there with us today.
Like the spirit was ever present, right?
Exactly.
So now your hand in this has been an ongoing project for a while, and even still today is stated that this is, still like the beginning kind of stages. Where are you on this? How have you had your hand in this?
Well, certainly we provided the assistance to get the keelboat here. So that was the most immediate assistance. But as head of tourism in the state of Indiana, we've been involved all along in terms of advocating at the federal level, working with our partners in Congress, with Senator Young, to make sure that they had the support and the state support to ensure that we could get this done. So it's been a long trail, I guess you could say, but an eventful one, and one that now continues to make Indiana a part of this whole story and leaves our national mark here on the scene.
Absolutely. Now, this has to be one of the things that you look back on in your career, and this is going to stand out as a point of pride, surely, yeah?
Absolutely, because this is where they met. William and Clark, and Lewis and Clark met, and this is where it kind of started, the history, the trip. And so it also has now, Indiana's the last state to have a trail system in the country, which of course we're very proud of, to be a part of the rest of the country.
Yeah, Suzanne, wow, and your pride behind it comes out just when you speak about it, so that's great. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being part of the reason that we get to be here.
Well, thank you for being here and making it even better than it was.
Aw, Suzanne, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Peyton Cook Clark Jr. Is there anything shorter I could use?
Bud will work just fine.
Bud will work just
Everybody
fine.
calls me Bud.
But in fact, you are, is it 3 generations away?
Yeah. Great. 3 greats, whatever that is.
3 greats away from of this day that we are honoring, Lewis and Clark. So what does it mean to you to be of this lineage and to be here?
This is kind of like a culmination of things that have been going on here at the Falls for decades. As I mentioned up on the podium this morning, the things that you see here today are the results of the grassroots effort of the communities. People that got together and made enough noise, the old squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of scenario, that created an interest and got the powers to be to make these kind of things happen. And the fact that I had the privilege of knowing most of the movers and shakers that managed to accomplish that for, decades now.
Right.
It's real, it's a very, very special thing for me to be here. It's an honor to be here. Okay, it really is. So.
And you had people to celebrate this great honor with today. You had people here with you. You had your wife, daughter,
my daughter, and my grandson, and they're no strangers to this place. When they get in this neck of the woods, I think the spot they love the most, they love Clark's cabin. The setting, overlooking the falls. Yeah. Go down there and have a picnic lunch. Our group has had encampments down there several times, and I like to, when the crowds disperse and the event's all over for the day, we go up and sit on the steps of the cabin and watch the sun set over the river. I love that place, and I recognize how special it is for the reasons I mentioned, because it didn't come, some politician the mayor or the governor or whoever, and I respect them all. I love them all for their support.
Yes.
But what made that happen, as well as this interpretive center, is the push from the community. So that's a special thing.
And I love that you can see that, and I absolutely love that you got to be an integral part of today, and just for your time right now. Thank you.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to? I realize the quote unquote the celebration portion's over.
Well, as far as the reason that we're here today to officially announce the Eastern legacy being officially recognized, I look forward, as I said earlier today, to what that recognition is going to mean in terms of what evolves all along the trail, and it is the kind of thing that brings communities together. I mean, we saw it during the bicentennial. And when we pushed off from Elizabeth, we didn't know what to expect when we headed down the Ohio River, They don't really know for sure, okay? The conservative estimate is over 300,000 people visited our camp. Some people think it's closer to 500,000.
Wow.
Okay. And that's amazing, I think. It's a testimonial to the fact that people care about the significance of their community and where they live and their history. You're going to see that happen now as the signage goes on and people, we're on the Eastern legacy, and it's not just Lewis and Clark. This is a good example here. George Rogers Clark, the other William Clark, who lived on the sunny side, who was served in the Illinois Regiment, was on the commissioner's board for managing the what they call Clark's Grant for all the men that served in the Illinois Regiment for the Revolutionary War. The two get mixed up, so we got a William Clark on both sides of the river. These are the kind of things that come to light, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
How long are you going to stay in town for?
Not sure. I'm going to see how this. It looks like things are winding down here. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of playing it by ear, and might stay overnight, might head home. I don't know. We'll see what's going on.
Awesome. But thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Great job today. Thank you for joining us for another episode of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm your host, Susie Selleck, and today we are in Clarksville, Indiana, here celebrating the expansion of the Lewis and Clark Trail. Remember, travel slowly and stop often. Bye for now.